Um, Hi to all of you, and I hope that you're all well. I hope that you're all fine during this time. My name is Eleftheria, and we are going to talk today a little bit about UX and UI. First of all, a few words about myself, and then I think that we can start. I am an app developer, but I really like UX and UI. I'm also currently doing my master's in UX and UI, and I'm a content creator, which means that I like to create different kind of content. Maybe this is articles or this is YouTube videos or whatever. But my true passion is really app developing. I used to develop with JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and some frameworks, but now I'm transitioning to more like an Android app developer. You can find me on my social media, and if you have any question or if you just want to ask something, I'm always available there. And I'm really active on Twitter, so maybe this is the best way to reach me. All right, so as for the things that we are going to see in this session, we will talk about UX and UI. What are these terms? What is user experience and user interface? And then we will continue with the heuristics. What are the heuristics? Why are they important? And how you can use them either as a developer or as a new coder. We will continue with the 10 usability heuristics. And then the final two parts are the do's and don'ts of UX, user experience. These are going to be some very practical tips. And also the same goes for user interface. All right, so let's get started with UX and UI. Maybe some of you are not very familiar with these two terms, and I will try to explain them as best as I can. UX stands for user experience, whereas UI stands for user interface. And although there is a ton of content out there, if you search like on Google, you will find a million of articles about UX and UI. The difference with this presentation is that we are going to explore these two terms by two different angles. So we are going to talk about user experience and user interface as users, but also as developers and designers. So I hope that by explaining these two terms, everything will be a little bit easier for you as well. So first, let's start with the user's perspective. So when a user hears the terms user interface and user experience, like what does he understand? User interface, from the user's perspective, is what the user interacts with a product, what taps or clicks on, and everything is localized in a device. So maybe in a smartphone, maybe in a physical device, maybe in a smartwatch, but this is localized somewhere. From the other hand, when we are talking about user experience, it's quite the opposite things. We are talking about how a user interacts with a product and how a user feels as a result of that interaction. So is he feeling angry? Is he feeling happy? And this whole experience is localized purely on his body. So maybe if you only look at the person, you can understand if the user experience is good or bad. So now let's switch and see the designer's perspective. What is the UI and the UX from the designer's perspective? And I will try to explain these two terms by giving you an analogy. Imagine that you have like a big icicle in front of you, but you can only see only the tip of that big icicle. This is the UI. From the other hand, this big icicle, it's not only this big tip, it's also like a huge mountain underneath that and the whole sea that holds everything together. This is the UX. So from the designer's perspective or even from the developer's perspective, user interface is what you can see and interact with, but user experience is what you can see alongside with what you don't see and everything that holds everything together. Okay, So now let's also trying to go a little bit deeper and try to explain what really is UX and maybe also why it's so important. UX is a really abstract term that holds a lot of other terms or like subjects into it. But mainly it has to do with the ease and satisfaction a person experiences when using a product. So from a user's perspective, the user experience can be defined both as the subjective and the objective experience. It can be objective, so here we have questions such as, does the user connect emotionally with the app by cracking a smile? Are the icons and illustrations understandably and aesthetically pleasing to the eye? And is the user pleasantly surprised by the animating interactions as a feedback mechanism? And from the other hand, it can also be objective. Does the user actually accomplish what he's trying to do? Is the speed of response from the app satisfactory? And is a swipe a get-through or a tap event like more convenient for a user? So the answer to questions like this will tell you about the user experience of a product and the overall usefulness and satisfaction derived from interacting with it. And so now I will also try to give you an example to help you understand even better what is user experience and why it's so important. Imagine an app, like a ride sharing app. Would you prefer an app that doesn't allow you to interact with the driver, like pick up your friends from the road, share the cost with your friends, doesn't like have live data, or doesn't allow you to save your favorite places? Or would you prefer, again, the same app, but this time a more personalized one that lets you interact with your driver, lets you share the cost with your friends, lets you save your favorite places and your favorite destinations. You can navigate it pretty easily. So I think that by this example you can understand what I mean, and I'm pretty sure that you would pick like the second app, but this is a pretty radical example, but I like to give that example because sometimes when you have a product, because you know that product really well, it's your own product, is the product that you have developed, you think that everyone will understand it or will think the same way you're thinking, but it's not like that. Sometimes we think that we have something real great. Sometimes we think that we have a great product, but we should be a little bit more skeptical about our product. And this is something that we will talk also in a bit, and you will understand what I mean. So why UX is so important? Because at its core is all about putting people before technology, and it focuses on creating positive experiences for users by serving them in the best way possible. And last but not least, by applying scientific methods and practices to the design process, the experience can be measured, controlled, tested, and refined, with the main goal of improving the satisfaction of users. And at the end, it's a win-win situation both for the users and the business. So what does a UX designer do? We will start with what the UX designer do, and later we will continue with the UI designer. By very, very simple terms, the UX designer do the practice of UX. Before we go into more details, maybe we can do a short history lesson. So the man that you see on the screen is Don Norman, and he used to work at Apple. He is an engineer. His first studies was in engineering, but then he continued his studies in psychology, and he focused on the communication between humans and computers. He was the first one that really put an effort on understanding how people interact with machines. And he didn't only like ask people, but he really observed people and watched them how they were using the machines, how they were trying to connect with them. So he's really the pioneer, and we will continue talking about him. If anyone is interested more about Don Norman, he has wrote a lot of interesting books. One of the best or the most known is The Design of Everyday Things, that I would suggest you to take a look on that if you're interested. You can also find it for free over the internet. So yeah, it's great, I think. Anyway, let's go back to see what does a UX designer do. And trust me, he does so many different things. UXers are the facilitators who bring everyone to the table, not just the programmer or business owners, but also other people like marketeers, end users, CEOs, CTOs, and they are trying to find solutions. They are asking a lot of questions. They are asking questions such as who are the users and what do they want? What are the main features the users need? What are their current behaviors? How will the product connect with them? What type of content users want and need? And what does the product look like? After that, they will ask more and more questions. So they will not just stop on the first few questions that I just showed you. When they gather all those questions, when they have the results, then they will try to continue. Here in this pyramid, you can see like 5 different layers, and I tried to gather some of the things that UX designers do. UX designers are never alone. They have a bunch of people near them. As I've already said, they have programmers, they have other designers, they have stakeholders, so they need to have a lot of people around them.
Just a
In
second.
the in this like layer, you can see user research and analysis, content strategy, information architecture, interaction design, and visual design. These are some of the things that they are doing, and I will just try to say a few words about each layer. On the user research and analysis, here is where a lot of work is being done, and in that layer, things such as user interviews, user behavior and studies, focus group and surveys are done. And after that, uh, okay, so the designer will create user personas, user stories, empathy maps, and customer journeys. And when all these things are done, then he will continue with the content strategy. So in the content strategy, things such as writing product copy and microcopy, selecting the right wording and tone for the target users, and writing emails, messaging, and design emails. So all of these things are going to happen. Some people think that this layer is a little bit, let's say, boring, but it's not. It's really important. Now in the middle layer, which is the information architecture, so here, this is the middle layer that connects the two previous and the two next that are going to come. In this layer, it's the lifeblood of digital systems and products. How the data is organized and presented heavily influences how the product is consumed and used. So in this layer, the designer will do things such as card sorting for defining taxonomies and simplifying navigation, sitemaps to view relational information structures, wireframes to lay out information on screen, and user flows to cover multi-step information process. Now in the next two layers, interaction design and visual design, these are two layers that not only UXers work, but also people from the user interface stage works. So again, really quickly, some of the things that the designers, the UX designer do is like creating the user's interface that should be easy to navigate, micro interactions that enhance feedback, screen states for relying system status, and interactive prototypes for user testing. And when all these things are done, they continue with the last stage, which is the visual design. And here the designers make sure that the design principles are all well done. They will check for things such as colors, typography, and icons, images, and all of these small details. So I think that by now you have understand what does a UX designer do, but let's also switch gears and see what is UI, what is why it's important, and what do people do in that field. Okay, so let's see why UI is so important. And a lot of people have the impression that a UI designer will only work with colors and typography and icons. But trust me, that's not only that. UI designers work with a lot of things. And it's not only buttons, it's not only icons, it's not only typography. UI, it can also be audible. Like imagine talking to a small machine like that and having a lot of different kind of information such as the weather, the temperature. They can manipulate maybe the temperature of your home as well. They can switch up the light. They can play music for you. Like small devices such as Amazon, Siri, Alexa, and stuff like that. They can do so many things. And this is UI design as well. And it's not only that. So UI, it's not only audible, but it can also be textual. Yes. So imagine your CMD, your terminal. I'm not saying that it's beautiful. It's actually pretty simple, but also this is a kind of UI design. So far we have audible, we have textual, and of course we have something that we can see, like buttons and icons. Why UI is so important, and I think that by now you have understood why it's so important. Well, a well-designed UI adds value to product. It creates a friendly environment that users can understand. It establishes a strong and clear visual language, and it creates smooth interaction and an enriching experience. So really, no one wants a bad design experience. Let's see now what does a UI designer do. And we will have this pyramid once again, but a UI designer doesn't really work with the three bottom layers. He just gets all the information that the UX designer has gathered, and he will work with these top two layers, the interaction design and the visual design. In the interaction design, he focuses on the surfaces details like buttons, colors, typography, and gives the finishing touches to the whole product experience. He has to have a lot of knowledge. It's not an easy job. The visual design skills that a designer should have include, but are not limited to typography, color theory, iconography, illustration, visual hierarchy, alignment, layout, spacing, readability, and contrast. All these elements work in conjunction to define a particular UI look and feel. And in the last stage, the visual design, this time the designer will focus on possible variations of the screen and how it will respond to users' input, which is really important. And he has to apply design patterns effectively, create component libraries, and establish complete design systems. He will do all of these things with the help of a UX designer as well. And let's not forget that sometimes the designers or even the programmers have to think for all these different kinds of screens, all these different kind of layers, and sometimes it can be a really stressful job. But I think that all the designers love working on that. And maybe if you're working as a front-end developer, you have felt that feeling that something is too much or you can't do it. But in the end, you're doing a really good job. To make a quick recap, I think that by now you have understand the differences between a UX designer and a UI designer. From the user's perspective, these two terms can be like really unrelated. From one hand, it's what he feels, and from the other hand, it's like what he taps on, what he sees. But from a designer's perspective or a developer's perspective, things are not so simple. UX and UI are more connected than a lot of people think. And UI cannot exist without UX. Okay, so now we will continue with the second part of this section, which is about heuristics. What are heuristics? Why are they important? And how you can use them? How they can help you as a developer or as a designer. Heuristics, in just a nutshell, heuristics is about making decisions with the information you have. You rarely will have all the information you need. So sometimes you have to figure out things. Heuristics help you to find solutions or to find things that don't work as they should work. And the quote from Don Norman that I really like says good design is actually a lot harder to notice than poor design. In part because good design fits our needs so well that the design is invisible. A good design, sometimes maybe it feels easy, but it's not. It's easy to pick up something, but is it useful? And sometimes because something easy, it doesn't mean that it's useful or that the customers really enjoy using it. Heuristics help us to find all these hiccups and like help us to do a really good job. Let's see what is heuristic evaluation, and we will continue on how you can do the heuristic evaluation. Heuristic evaluation is a key part of designing a great product that users can easily engage with and find value in their interaction. Its purpose is to detect usability issues that may occur when users interact with a product and identify ways to resolve them. And it is conducted against the predetermined set of usability principles known as heuristics. Now, there are numerous heuristics, but this doesn't mean that all the heuristics have the same efficiency and validity. And although the end goal may be the same, to help the user and to have like a real good product, but again, the efficiency and the validity, as I said, are not. Here I have a table with the different things that you can find for the usability inspection methods, such as cognitive walkthrough, user testing, and heuristic analysis. We're not going to go through this table as we are only going to talk about specific things that I believe are more useful for a young developer and a young designer. So first, a few questions on how to conduct an effective heuristic evaluations. And these are some practical things, some things that you really want to have. You have to define the scope of your evaluation and ask yourself, what do I want to test? You have a product, you have an app, you want to test it, but you have to know about what are you going to search. Then you have to know your end user. Who is this product for? Is it for your friends? Is it for your colleagues? Is it for your parents? Is it for your family? Who is your end user? And then continue by choosing your set of heuristics. Which usability principle should be followed? And this is something that, again, we are going to talk in a bit. Continue with setting up an evaluation system and identifying all the issues. This is where your question plays a big role and your end users are playing a big role. They will help you to identify those issues. And last but not least, analyze and summarize findings. Because maybe you did a great research, maybe you have found a lot of things, but you have to have a way to manipulate all those things that you have found. You have to create like maybe a short report or something to show to your colleagues or to your boss. and say, hey, these things doesn't work really well. I had my users, they couldn't find something or they couldn't use something. Appointing 7 to 8 heuristic evaluators should identify over 80% of usability features. This means that it's really important to do that research. It can really help you and it can save your product. This is the main part of our talk. We are going to the third part, which is the 10 usability heuristics by Jacob Nielsen. In 1995, Jacob Nielsen and Don Norman, they created a manifest with 10, here I say usability heuristics, but in reality is 10 easy rules that you have to follow if you want to have a great product. Let's start. So the first rule is visibility of system status. Imagine your phone. You have information about everything. So you have information about the weather, if you have notifications, emails, what time is it, and if somebody called you, and all of these sorts of things. The user always wants to have control. Give them this control. The second thing is match between the system and the real world. Now, people are approaching every new system with a mental model in mind. In other words, sometimes people presume they know how the system could work based on the experience they had with previous systems. And an extreme example is schematics design, which transfer all the details of real-world objects into software. So as you can see here, a compass, a bin, a folder. So designers are using systems like that, images like that, because the users know in real life how things are. So they are trying to transfer the same experience in phones or in products. And this doesn't work only with icons, but even with wordings and testing and text as well. The third rule is user control and freedom. People often interact with the system in a hurry, and oftentimes they're not even very concentrated on that. But this results in things like misclicks or other accidents, which might be a little bit frustrating. You should always give your user something like an emergency exit, so like a button to go back, a button to undo an action. There should always be something there, something that it's clearly an exit mechanism that provides the users with an easy way to go back after they did something that they didn't want to. The fourth rule is consistency and standards. Have you ever noticed that copy-paste functionality works everywhere the same? Well, this is because this is how it's supposed to work. People know what does a copy paste do. People know some basic things. You don't want to reinvent the wheel with your app or with your product. Try for consistency and standards, and this should be followed everywhere in colors, in typography, in text, in size. Consistency is one of the most important things, and if a user already knows something, you don't want to break that. You don't want to switch that. Now the fifth rule is error prevention. There are two kinds of errors created by interaction with a user interface, and these are slips and mistakes. Slips happens when the user tends to do an action, but due to a low intention performs another one. To prevent, to prevent this use of to prevent that use constraints that don't allow a user to set a ramp value, and you can see like an example here on the screen. But there are also the mistakes. Mistakes are often caused by a user's incorrect mental model of how the system works. And this kind of errors don't often come with an easy fix, and they should be relieved during the user testing phase. So use clear communication and a consistent design system to prevent this kind of mistakes. Now 6. Recognition rather than recall. And again, here we have two types of memory. This is recognition and recall. In the case of recognition, the user has to just see something and he will understand it. But in the case of recall, he has to go back deep down in his memory chunks to try to find things. Things such as names or dates, which are not so easy. For your app, you want to have recognition. So you want to have easy things, things that the user will see, will recognize, and it will be easy for him to use. Coursera, for example, has like a really good menu that helps the user to find everything a little bit quicker. You can see the subjects, you can see the lessons, you can see the categories, you can see from who are these lessons taught, which is really, really, really important. You want something fast. The seventh rule is flexibility and efficiency of use. And remember that you have users or you want your product to have a lot of users. Now, some of those users will be better with the technology and some of them not. Some of them will be first-time users and some of them will have used your product a lot of time. You want to help both of these categories of users. You want to help both the first-time users and the more experienced one, or as we call them, the power users. And to do so for the first category, you want simple things, you want like icons, you want information. But for the next category, the power users, you want things to be done fast. Maybe your power users want to extend the product, maybe want to connect with another product. So you have to let them do these actions. You have to make them feel the satisfaction your product gives them. And the eighth rule, which is I think one of my favorite one, is aesthetic and minimal design. You want minimal design because your users be should find it easy to find all those information that they need. But if they have like a lot of information in front of them, this will distract them and they won't do their action with ease. So you want a minimal design and you want to show them only a very few things, a very standard things. And the best example here is Google. Like when you open Google Chrome, the only thing that you see is actually a bar, which in that bar you will type whatever you're looking for. But there are no other buttons, there are no other distractions, there are no ads, there isn't anything else, just a search box. Your app should be really, really simple. And my number one rule here would be to declutter the product that you have, and the easiest way to declutter a product is by adding white space. So you want white and like big margins and paddings. If you're feeling like extra comfortable with colors, yes, do use them, but in general, you want something simple, you want something white. Now, the ninth rule is help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. Whether we want it or not, users always tend to get themselves into situations that they need to find a way out. You should always be the opposite of rude. You should always be very polite and try to help them. So as the example shows, maybe a user is trying to upload a photo that your system doesn't support. So instead of saying, hey, you did a mistake, or having a weird code, something that the developer would find is, you don't want that. You want to have a polite message that will inform the user that your system like accepts this and this and this types, and he should upload something like that. Okay, and the last rule is help and documentation. So yes, you are aiming to have a perfect product, a product that the user shouldn't try to search to find the help and the documentation, but if they are trying to find something, then you should provide the help and documentation You want to have like simple words, simple text. You don't know if everyone understands the same language as well as you do. And again, a very good example of that is Trello, which uses like very minimal and very simple text. When we say documentation, sometimes we think like big text, like a lot of pages, but no, you shouldn't aiming for a lot of things, just a few things and it will be fine. Alright, these were the 10 rules, and I hope that you will start using them if you don't already. So we will continue with the fourth part, and I hope that you are still with me. I hope that you now we will continue with a more fun part. So let's do a quick check to see the do's and the don'ts of a user experience designer. So for the user experience, don't assume you know what users want. That's why you're doing the tests, because you don't. Don't follow the hippo at the room, and hippo stands for the highest paid person's opinion. And do make the time and effort for user research. We've already said that user research is really, really, really important, and you should focus your time and your energy into that. Don't just create a list of methods to check off. It's not a to-do list. And do understand all the research options and the strengths of each. Don't prototype too soon. Don't think that you have a perfect product. Don't try to develop it too soon. Just test it again. And don't just test with your friends that are developers, but go to real people. Go to people that they see your product for the first time and try to gather their opinions and how they truly feel about your product. Do conduct scoping research and not just evaluative, and do focus on what people do rather than on what people say. If you can only do one thing, then do conduct user testing. We already said how important that is. And don't overlook existing insight from customer care representatives. Sometimes you can really take important things and important lessons. And as always, do collaborate. UX designers and UI designers are never alone, and they shouldn't be alone. Do find someone qualified to do your research or become one qualified person yourself. And I hope that with the tips that I just mentioned, it will be a little bit easier for you to do that research. Now, the last part is going to be like a short test about yourself. Don't be afraid, I'm not going to ask you anything into that test, but it's going to help you to find out if you are a good designer or a bad designer. And I hope that you are a good designer. All right, are you ready? Let's get started. So, a good designer is not the one who designs beautiful, usable, and impressive interfaces. The main difference that sets apart a good designer from a bad one is the mindset. So keep in mind the mindset and let's see that part. The designer's mindset. So a good designer listens to everyone from decision makers, team members, and stakeholders, whereas a bad designer judges and suggests solutions all the time. So pick one. Are you the good or the bad one? And a good designer questions the status quo and digs deep to find out real problems and needs, as well as a bad designer follows the rule of we're always done it that way or only try to fix the symptoms. And a good designer takes time to ask about what is missing and is always uncertain about his understandings and designs. But the bad one follows his assumptions, is always certain about his works, and then the good designer has many solutions and ideas and tries always to find issues and flaws in his work. But the bad designer has only one idea to invest his time and effort to convince others with, and always defines his work. Now, the good designer loves working with others and revisits his thoughts, has something to learn from anyone he meets, and also loves, but a bad designer loves to work alone, tries to confirm his thoughts, and thinks he knows everything. Now the good designer loves to be wrong, seeks for feedback, whereas the bad one loves to be always right and seeks for praise. The good designer leads, the bad designer follows. So pick one. And that was it, guys. That was my presentation, and I hope that you liked it. If you have any question or really anything, like, you can find me on my social media. And yeah, that was it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Ellie. I have just one question from
Yeah.
the comments section, and I'm going to read it to you. It says, what are the basic software to use for design?
It depends on the work that you're trying to do. If you're trying, for example, to prototype something, or if you're on the previous stages, even before prototyping, I would suggest you to pick like even plain pen and paper and start designing there. Then you can continue to Balsamic. I'm not sure if you know that software. I think that for a month or maybe a few weeks, it's free. It's very easy to be used. And then if you're okay with that pro software, you can continue also with things such as Illustrator and Photoshop. But it really depends on the work that you're trying to do. And also Adobe has some really good softwares, but sometimes they are paid and it can be a little bit expensive. So yeah, that's it.
How, how easy, how fast can one catch up to get started with being a UI or US designer? What's the time frame
I,
for a beginner?
yes, I think that the most important step is to read and study a little bit some basic things about design. But then the next step should be to try to do something, try to build slowly a portfolio so you can also later go to a manager or a hiring boss or something to find a job. Now, in order to build a portfolio, in order to build a project and the things that you have to do in this project, try to find something that doesn't work very well. Sometimes some websites aren't working very well. You can find a lot of issues in sites like when you're trying to book a ticket. This is something like that a lot of people are doing. So go there and study that website, see what's wrong, see what's beautiful, and then write a report. Write a report with the things that are not working very well. Go to your friends, ask their opinion, so your friends will be the users, what's not working very well, and then try to find ways to fix those issues. Maybe an issue is that you can only pick English and there is not any other language, but there are some people that don't know English. So a suggestion there would be to have another language. Or sometimes the letters are very small and like people that have eyes problems like can't read very easily. So create a report with all your solutions. This is how you build a portfolio, and I think that it's a really good practice for beginners as well.
All right. Last question from me. Can you share resources or links that one can use to get started? Just to give you
Uh,
some bit of context around the question. If I want to advise someone to get started with web development, for example, I could ask the person to look at the free code camp because it's a free curriculum. So, do we have platforms like that? If none, what are the free resources one can use to get started for UI or UX?
yes. So I think that my first answer would be to read the book that I saw you a little bit. Like, let me try to find it. It is by Don Norman, and yeah, sorry, just a moment to find it. You can find some free books over the internet, but they are like really good. Okay, sorry. Yeah, okay. So this is the book that I would suggest someone to start with. It's called The Design of Everyday Things, and everyone can find it for free, sorry, over the internet. It's written by Don Norman. It's a little bit old, like I think that he wrote that book like maybe even 20 years ago, but the things that he says in that book are very worthy and you can understand them very easily. It's a book for everyone. You don't have to be a designer or a developer to understand that book. He gives some really good examples. So I would start from that, and then the next thing that I would do is again to study the 10 rules that I mentioned. With these 10 rules, you can do a lot of things. You can go to a website and again try to find all the problems by using these 10 rules. And if you're looking on more things and not just those that I mentioned, then Udacity has some good courses about UX and UI. And on some of these courses, also Don Norman, which is the pioneer of this field, is being interviewed and he's giving his options and his opinions. And if you're looking even on more things, you can also search on Coursera and UDX. They also have some very, very good courses.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time. It was quite inspiring.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, thank you. The pleasure was mine.
Bye. Have a great day.
Have a great day, you too. Bye.